Hello, everybody. This is the paper called the Beyond Origin or Beyond Origin 3Y, also known as the Lost Gaia Theory or End-to-End Gaia Hypothesis. So, if you're not familiar with spiritual ideas about the planet, this is a very good way to start. It's called Beyond Origin. And really looking at where we're going and how to understand where we are going on the planet. I'm going to be using AI to help understand some of this paper. Hopefully, we'll use a limited amount. Most of the paper, and in fact, all of the paper was written by me, with the exception of a summary section here that I used some artificial intelligence to help with. So at this point, it's a great point to start because it's almost 100% human written and has many different ideas that are important for people that are interested in how the Earth works, both logically and spiritually. So if you're not familiar with some of the other papers I've been working on, one of the other papers I've been working on is called 3 equals green. We'll try to maybe discuss that. That is basically on the concept of spectral grand unification. And then I also have one called universal satanic axes or off-axis universal satanic axis. So that has to do with other axes besides primary axes that may be super important, particularly in the spiritual world. If you're trying to understand the planet beyond just X, Y, and Z, there's a lot of other ways to understand it. So, but I wanted to start with this paper. Probably the most funny paper and interesting paper to start with would be the Satanic Axis paper. You'll kind of get the drift that some of the science that has been previously done is maybe not correct, and we need to think about the Earth very differently to make more progress at this point in human history. So Beyond Origin is kind of a middle paper to look at, and the last paper is really 3 equals green that you can take a look at if you're interested.
All right, so are you ready to dive into some seriously out there theories this time? Because I have to say, this one's a real head scratcher, even for us. We're talking about the moon, tides,
Now it's
that
funny
kind of
they
thing.
say
we're all
that because
fascinated
it's
by the moon,
actually
right?
part of the
Exactly.
North Pole and the
But
South Pole
these
primarily
sources
that we're going
take
to be
that
looking at
connection
here.
to a whole other level.
Oh, yeah. To where?
I'm talking about a geocentric universe with Earth at the center, but also, get this, a network of spiritual compasses.
Okay, now you've got my attention. Spiritual compasses.
Yeah, they suggest these compasses might influence everything from the tides to, get this, reincarnation.
Wow. That's quite a leap.
I know, right? It's a lot to unpack, but that's why we're here. The sources we're looking at today, they're not just content with dismissing older geocentric models.
So, like throwing Ptolemy out the window.
Yeah, exactly. They're blending those old ideas with modern science and this whole spiritual lens.
So they're not rejecting science?
No.
So, really, this paper started with a couple different weird ideas that actually may have some truth to them, more than we realized about the way that the universe works. So, it actually has to do with the history of science and the history of astronomy as well as astrology. So what we discovered is there is this mysterious Y fault. As you can see, there's a fault here that has a Y shaped here. This actually goes right to the tip of India, and it's called the 3Y fault. It's perhaps the most significant fault on the planet that has a very ordinary shape that you might be aware of. Many of the other faults also do have the Y shape. You'll notice there's a Y here probably, and another Y over on this side, and then even a Y on the opposite side of Antarctica. So however you look at it, it's basically a very important fault. When you think about reincarnation and the spiritual world, it becomes extremely important to try to understand what's going on. So early in the history, many scientists believed, because they looked at the sun and it looks like it's actually going around the Earth rather than the Earth going around the sun. So this is actually a geocentric model of how, kind of looking back at history of what we understood correctly in a geocentric world and perhaps what we understood incorrectly, and actually looking at all the work that has been done on the geocentric side to help us understand the universe better, we may actually need to be a little bit more geocentric than we actually believed in the past. So this is one of the first papers of its kind to suggest that.
Not at all. They're using it, but also looking for deeper meaning in like the Earth's physical processes, you know.
Interesting. A more holistic approach then.
Yeah, exactly. And what I found really interesting was how they use all these specific examples to make you rethink things you might just take for granted.
Can you give me an example?
Like, have you ever really thought about why we have high tides on the opposite side of the Earth from the moon?
I'll admit I haven't given it much thought.
Right. You would think just intuitively that the water would be pulled towards the moon's gravity, not pushed away, right?
Yeah, makes sense. It's like a water's trying to get away from the moon on that side.
Right. And most explanations focus on the moon's pull making a...
Now, it's kind of surprising that the AI didn't pick up on this concept early on. I maybe needed to move this diagram a little bit higher up to maybe that would help everyone in general understand exactly what we're trying to talk about here. So I'm going to try to grab both of these images, copy them, and move them up to the top of the document. I thought that was fairly clear on what the whole concept was, but it might not have been, so I'm going to move it up here. It's kind of hard to shrink that down to size because this model of the North Pole kind of also explained what we were trying to talk about here. So if you really think about the universe, we have a linear part, which is primarily this parts of the universe that we understand, and a nonlinear part. And we basically go in the circle where we understand parts of that universe, and then as we think we understand more and more, and we can kind of diagram it into this linear world of understanding, it kind of goes in a loop like this. So in a similar way, we have the Milky Way galaxy here, and we actually go through this loop, right? We have our Earth, and then we go through the sun, and then we go back to the Milky Way, and then we come back from the moon, because the moon is actually further out from the Earth, typically, and then we go in a circle like this. So this is basically how we understand the universe, and actually the Earth is a very major part of that understanding, and it's actually, whether you disagree of linear or non-linear part, the smaller you get in this discussion, typically you talk about non-linear things being smaller, but they could also be bigger. So you could maybe also swap this diagram, but it basically explains the essence of what we're trying to talk about.
bulge on the side facing it, right? That's our high tide.
Right. I've always heard that explanation.
But these sources, they point out that the bulge on the opposite side, it might not just be inertia causing it.
Okay, so what are they saying is causing it then?
They suggest things like ocean currents, maybe even the shapes of the continents, stuff like that, could be playing a bigger role.
Huh. A much bigger role than we realize.
Right. Like,
Well,
we just haven't fully understood how it all works yet. Okay, get this. They talk about these natural cycles we have, right?
Yeah.
Like the 10 minutes it takes for light to travel from the sun to us.
Right.
The 24-hour rotation of the Earth, the rhythms of the tides, all that. They're calling it a universal safety code.
Okay, a safety code, as
Yeah.
in like a message.
Kind of.
So really what happened here also that wasn't really explained well in this diagram is basically this diagram, right? So originally we started off with a diagram of how the Earth works based on Antarctica looking like a brain. But there was so much more than just that. So if you start to understand Antarctica Universal, that was another paper that I wrote, basically you'll start to see that there's so many other things going on the planet beyond just Antarctica. And beyond origin is really beyond Antarctica or beyond 3Y. And I hate to say it that way, but it's not that way at all. So it's actually getting into what's called the Gaia theory or the Gaia hypothesis, which has been written by other authors outside of what I've written about, but it's a very important historical document, the Gaia theory. You should definitely look into that. And this is more along the lines of the Gaia theory, and that's why we wanted to call it Beyond Origin, 3Y, Lost Gaia theory. So the reason it's the Lost Gaia theory is because many of these ideas have never been previously diagrammed ever in the history of Earth, right? So, for example, this eye here in Africa, the fact that all of Africa kind of looks like a rhinoceros or an elephant. You have little tear marks. You have kiss marks off of South America. You have even other eyes in the jungle here, you have a big, deep river called the Amazon that looks like a neuron going deep into a brain. And then you have some lakes that may be connected. And then you have a ear of Africa and even two holes within those ears and some mysterious islands, as well as kind of a galaxy-shaped islands. For example, if you look at Haiti and Dominican Republic, or Papua New Guinea and the far eastern side of basically Papua New Guinea, kind of looks like a galaxy, spinning galaxy. So the question is, what does all this mean? And that's basically what the whole beyond origin is, and the lost Gaia theory is, and the Gaia hypothesis. It's basically saying our Earth is alive. Okay, so now we understand that the Antarctica looks like a brain, but what's next? And that's really the goal of this research here.
But here's where it gets weird. They suggest that these cycles could be influencing us, like our actions, in ways we don't realize.
Really? Like how?
Like the timing of an email, or even like a security issue, could be linked to these bigger cycles.
So they're saying it's not just about the Earth and the universe, but about us too.
Exactly, this interconnectedness. But to really understand this whole thing, we need to rewind a bit.
Okay, back to the beginning.
Right. So they start by talking about Ptolemy, the ancient Greek astronomer. He was really into the whole geocentric model of the universe.
Right, with the Earth at the center of everything.
Exactly. Now, we know that's not how the solar system actually worked.
So that's true. Ptolemy worked on some early mapping as well as some of the early cartographers. There's a big description in this paper about how the original map of the Earth was formed. There were superstitions in those maps, and some of those superstitions may actually been 100% correct. So the notion that the Earth doesn't matter in the way that the universe works, I mean, we've been spinning around the galaxy. Not only have we spinning around the solar system billions and trillions of times, we basically have been spinning around the entire Milky Way. So that means that we're connected to the entire Milky Way, that the Earth's formations would definitely be connected not only to our sun, but to our entire solar system, as well as moon, and every feature of the possible visible universe even. So that's where we basically get into some more discussion.
Yeah, we learned that in elementary school.
Right. But Ptolemy's view was super influential for over 2,000 years.
It makes sense in a way if you think about how people saw the world back then. I mean, every day the sun looks like it's moving across the sky.
It does.
It rises, it sets, it seems like it's going around us. Plus, we feel the Earth as solid, stationary, right under our feet.
It's true. It's very convincing when you experience it that way.
Yeah. So it's easy to get how that geocentric view made sense.
Totally. And these sources, they actually emphasize this point, that idea of ancient knowledge.
Like we've lost something along the way?
Maybe. They even bring up the Pythagorean tuning diagram, the one about musical harmony and ratios.
Yeah, I remember learning about that.
Well, they seem to be hinting that this ancient knowledge, like that diagram, is still relevant today.
Huh, like a code waiting to be cracked or something.
Exactly. Okay, so get ready, because now we're going from ancient knowledge to something even wilder.
Wilder than a geocentric universe.
Oh yeah, way wilder. Because it's not just about the Earth being at the center anymore. We're talking multiple compasses.
Wait, compasses? Like more than one?
Yeah, like a whole bunch. We've got a reincarnation compass, a wildlife compass, even an ocean compass.
Right.
And they're all connected somehow.
Okay, hold on. I need to process this. Multiple compasses. Influencing what exactly?
Well, they don't exactly give us a straight answer. But these sources, they're suggesting that each compass has a different role,
Like shaping life on Earth.
Yeah, exactly. And they're all intertwined.
Okay, let's break this down a bit. What about this reincarnation compass? What's that all about?
So they have this one image, right? And it shows this super weird three-sided shape right in the Indian Ocean. Have you ever seen anything like that?
A three-sided compass? No, can't say that I have.
Okay, so here you go. AI says it's never seen this before, so it's kind of ironic because it's a very important compass, right? You basically have a fault line. This is a zoom in of that fault, but let me go show you here. So you basically have this 3Y fault coming out of India. It's basically shown in this region right here, 3Y. And then you can see on a bigger map, we'll try to zoom in and show you where that is again. So again, it's basically this fault line right here, and it shows almost perfect symmetry around Antarctica. on both sides. You can see this trapezoidal shape with this Y coming out of here. And because India is so interested in reincarnation, it just seems intuitively proven that, if we have billions of people basically studying reincarnation in India, that would have to have some physical truth to it. It's not completely ignorable. There's no one in their right mind that would say ignore what all these people are been working on spiritually. So basically that's the essence of the 3Y fault, and it is a fault because there's actually a lot more going on than just reincarnation. So in some ways they may be correct about a lot of things, but there's also a lot of other things to understand. I'll continue on with this AI discussion a little bit here.
It's pretty out there. And the text, it mentions things like geological formations, planetary movements, even human actions. Like it's all part of this big cycle.
Okay, so it's all connected, but how does it actually work? They don't really explain that, do they?
Not really, no. It's more like they're giving us these puzzle pieces and we have to figure out how they fit.
Okay, intriguing. What about this ocean compass there? How does that one work?
Right, so with that one, they've marked specific spots on the map. Like really specific places.
Like where? Give me some examples.
Okay, so we've got the Sunda Strait, the Mozambique Channel, Panama, the Caribbean, even the Cape Verde Islands are on there.
Interesting. Those are all places with some pretty intense ocean currents, aren't they?
Exactly. And a lot of tidal activity too. So the source material, it's almost like they're suggesting these places are like nodes.
Nodes, like energetic focal points or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like acupuncture points for the planet's energy flow or something.
So here you can just kind of see, as they're talking about the planet's energy flow, the 3Y compass is actually not really marked very clearly on this, but you can see there's a channel that goes off to the left here, and then one that also goes off to the right. There's a wildlife compass, which needs a lot of explanation of why it's down here, and it's actually a paired wildlife compass. So it's actually located here as well as in the Caribbean. There's actually a circular loop there that you'll see in the islands, in the chain of islands there. So, and then there's also a polar real compass. So this is the actual compass of the planet. If you're familiar with this, the Earth spins on the axis, which is the center, but the actual magnetic field compass is actually off-centered from that, which is located right here down in Tasmania. So it's quite an explanation of why this would be the truth when you have an actual, the Earth is spinning around a point in here in this region, which is the actual South Pole, and yet the actual compass is thousands of miles away from there. So this is basically the primary argument for a spiritual reality, is that why would these two things be very different?
Okay, now get ready for this next part because this is where it gets really interesting and kind of personal too.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Personal how?
So they have this other compass image, right? They're calling it the wildlife compass.
The wildlife compass, okay.
And they're claiming that it doesn't work the way we think compasses work. Like humans, we see the world one way, right?
Sure.
But they're saying that animals, they're tuned into this whole other frequency, and that humans aren't wild enough to understand it.
So they're saying that animals have a different way of navigating, that they're tapping into something we're not.
Yeah, like they have a different understanding of Earth's compass or something.
Wow. That's a pretty wild thought. But how do they know that? Do they have any evidence for this?
Well, this is where the personal bit comes in.
Yeah.
They talk about the author's grandfather who had Alzheimer's.
Okay.
And they're wondering if maybe, because he spent time in Sulawesi in Indonesia,
Sulawesi, okay.
they're wondering if maybe that somehow gave him a different perspective.
He was more in tune with this wildlife compass.
Yeah, and he talked about him forgetting off-Earth schools.
Yeah.
He was tapping into something beyond our usual human understanding.
Wow, that's quite a connection they're making. But
So here's a diagram of the declination field. If you're not familiar with this, you can grab an image from NOAA and you can search for declination field. The belief here is that actually the field right now is quite obviously correct. One of the reasonings for that is that you would expect the land masses to kind of follow where the field lines are in terms of the correct compass, right? So there's basically been quite a lot of push in certain areas and not so much push in other areas. So one of the reasons is that this line goes right down the center here. It primarily goes down the center of the United States and it actually misses it. So this line actually may be shifted over there from sometimes, or even on one side of South America to the other, but it basically should follow kind of a UV pattern here. So you can see a U here and then kind of a V where it would converge here and go on to the magnetic South Pole, as well as the magnetic North Pole, which is not really shown on this diagram. But in general, there are major cities along here that you can see Louisiana down here, Lagos, Nigeria, parts of Lisbon, have essentially the correct compass. So that means here in Mumbai, the compass works correctly. Down here in Singapore, the compass would work correctly. So if you're on one side of the compass or the other, it would have very different impact on how you think. For example, it could be off by almost 90 degrees. So let me just show it on the video again. So if the compass is supposed to point this way, sometimes it could point that way or even the other way. So it depends on where you're located on the planet. It could be up to 90 degrees off. And it's very important to have a correct compass for everything. Imagine if you're a tiny cell or a tiny little organism and you're trying to grow, it could have a major impact on your biology at a very fundamental level.
Pretty vague, isn't it?
Totally. It's not like they're giving us a step-by-step guide to this wildlife compass or anything. But they do show these images, right? And they link the compass to Sulawesi and the Maluku Islands. So it's like they're saying, hey, look for the patterns, see what you find.
Intriguing. A bit of a mystery for the listeners to ponder.
Exactly. Now hold on tight, because we're moving from compasses to something even bigger. Earth's halo.
Earth's halo. Okay, you're going to have to explain this one.
So they've got this one visual, right? It's the yellow line on a map. And it goes all the way around the globe, connecting the North and South poles.
A halo that circles the entire planet. Got it.
And get this, the line goes right through the Caribbean. Then it hits the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, passes by Easter Island, the Galapagos Triple Junction, and Fiji.
Hold on, all those places. It's like a highlight reel of the most geologically active and kind of mysterious spots on the planet.
Right, and that's their point. They're saying that the Earth's geology, it's not random. It's all connected to this spiritual energy.
So the halo, it's like a visual representation of that connection.
Exactly. And they don't stop there. Then they introduce this idea of an upside-down halo above Antarctica.
An upside-down halo? Okay, now I'm really lost. Where does this one fit in?
They connected to this idea of a capital of Antarctica.
The capital of Antarctica.
Yeah, and get this, it's not actually in Antarctica. It's in the middle of the Indian Ocean.
The Indian Ocean. Now that's interesting. We all know that place is known for some pretty intense weather.
Right, like crazy winds and waves, some of the most extreme on the planet. And they're playing that up, you know? Like this capital, it's in the middle of all that power.
So they're creating this sense of mystery, right?
So here you can kind of see how that halo works that they were just discussing. So basically it's a aurora, right? So it basically spins around the South Pole and North Pole, and it's actually could be even more visible on the South Pole. And here you can see Tasmania kind of pointing to the magnetic South Pole, which would be right in here. There's kind of like almost a little antler point there on that point. But if you trace this properly, you can see from one side to the other, you're basically almost a straight line from where this magnetic South Pole would be all the way across to this whole other side of Antarctica, which is basically the tail of Antarctica. And kind of mirror imaging here, you have both Antarctica and South America. I'll continue on here. Hold on.
The idea that there's something important, something powerful hidden within all that chaos.
Exactly. Like a secret energy center that we're just starting to understand.
Yeah.
You know, it just occurred to me going through all this, there are so many visuals in this material.
Oh, yeah, tons of them.
It's like maps, diagrams, these kind of mysterious images.
Yeah, and I definitely
It's true, they
recommend
don't really
going
hold
through
back
and kind
on
of
that, do they?
diagramming some of your
No.
own things.
Like
on
they're
top
trying
of
to get
some
us
of
to
these.
understand on a different level, you know?
Right, like bypass the language part of our brains.
Exactly. Tap into that visual part, the part that sees connections and patterns.
Yeah, it's like our ancestors with those cave paintings. Or constellations, right, mapping out the world around them.
It's like they're speaking a different language.
A language that's older than words.
Yeah. And maybe more powerful in a way.
Maybe. And don't forget this idea that the Earth itself is aware.
Oh, right.
It has that self-control, remember?
Right, like it can sense the universe.
That's not something you learn in a science textbook.
Definitely not. It's a whole other level. And it makes you think about this black North Pole.
What about it?
Well, if Earth is sensing things, like they're saying,
Yeah.
could that be like the main connection point?
Ooh, interesting.
Like a giant antenna for the whole planet?
I like that. And all those images of solar flares
Yeah.
hitting our magnetic field.
Right.
What if that's not just random energy,
Okay, so here's the big question. The one that's been bugging me this whole time, this off-Earth connection,
Yeah.
given everything we've talked about.
Right, all this wild stuff.
Is it really so crazy to think there might be something to it?
It's definitely the most out there part of their theory. I'll give you that.
But think about it. We've got the Earth maybe as this living thing.
Right, with its own awareness.
And those ancient symbols and this black North Pole as a conduit.
A conduit to what, though?
Exactly. That's the mystery, isn't it? What if off-Earth doesn't mean aliens or spaceships?
Okay.
What if it's something we haven't even imagined yet?
Like other dimensions.
Or realms of existence that our science can't even detect yet?
It's like opening a door and having no idea what's on the other side.
A door to infinite possibilities. And maybe that's the point of all this.
To stay open to those possibilities.
Yeah, to never stop asking what if. Because who knows what we might discover
Exactly. And those discoveries might be closer than we think.
right in front of our eyes.
Or even under our feet.
That's a great place to leave it. So keep those minds open, everyone, and we'll see.
Okay, so I hope you really enjoyed that. I want to close it up with this video here. Hopefully you'll enjoy this one as well.
The sun is a beautifully magnetically driven star, but we can't actually see magnetic field lines. They're essentially invisible, and so we have to turn to models in order for us to see the global magnetic structure of the sun. What we're looking at here is one such model, and the color coding represents what we call open magnetic field lines, which means that they extend from within the sun all the way out to really, really far out in space.
Okay, so you can take a look at this video, but I hope you've really enjoyed this presentation overall of what's going on about not only our planet, but the entire universe, really. It was really fun to write this paper and to think about, things beyond just typical ideas that you might work with on artificial intelligence. So I hope that this will maybe really help you think about the way that you think about our planet. So, and basically what I mean by that is looking at this kind of linear and nonlinear aspects of how the entire planet works. So basically relooking at the map of the planet and saying, hey, what's really going on here? And I hope this really helps you get some interesting work and projects going with people around the world. It has been really fun to kind of draw some connections here and see how to work together on understanding our planet. Thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed the presentation.